Christmas is a pretty special time of year. You get to spend much needed time with close friends and family, reflect on the year past, and, well, play an excessive amounts of video games when it's all said and done. But when you're a kid, and powerless to what Santa Claus gets you, quality is never guaranteed.
I'm sure we've all received some amazing and unforgettable gaming experiences from the festive season, but there's no doubt that with the good comes the bad. With that said, we're going to take a look at some of the best and worst video games we've ever gotten for Christmas.
At risk of sounding like ungrateful millennials, I think Minimme and myself can agree that there's no such thing as a bad present if it's been given with love and kindness. The silver lining behind getting a bad video game for Christmas is that ultimately it came from a place of love from somebody who cares about you, no matter how bad the game really is.
The upside of getting a great game for Christmas though is that you're left with a cherished memory that will stick with you for the rest of your life. So let's start by exploring the best games that have made it to the bottom of our Christmas trees.
When I was 10 years old in the Christmas of 2005, I remember finding a video game shaped present under the tree. I asked my mum every single day of December to get Hulk Ultimate Destruction for the PlayStation 2. And forever cynical of my mother's ability to follow orders, I was convinced that she had gotten me the 2003 Hulk movie tie-in game instead. Hulk Ultimate Destruction was an open-world sandbox game featuring the titular denim short-clad Calamity, whereas 2003's Hulk was a flaming pile of radioactive waste. On Christmas Day, I held the wrapped present in my hands, almost certain that my hopes and dreams of going greener than electric cars were scrapped, until miraculously, Hulk Ultimate Destruction came bursting out of the wrapping paper. And there it was, in my arms as I screamed with excitement and joy, but mostly with relief. And thank God Hulk Ultimate Destruction turned out to be good. In fact, to this day it's probably my favourite comic book video game, beating titles like Spider-Man 2 and X-Men Origins Wolverine, and that's significant considering how excellent both of those titles are. Ultimate Destruction is a potent mix of earth-shattering action and more traditional open-world design. Hulk's moveset is easily the game's best feature, as you unlock an enormous repertoire of increasingly powerful attacks and abilities. The creativity on display here is second to none. Hulk can transform cars into boxing gloves, catch missiles and throw them back at enemies, and even perform cataclysmic super moves when his health is full. Developer Free Radical nailed how Hulk feels. When you run through the streets, you genuinely feel like a ball of pure muscle and rage. By holding down the run button, you barrel through obstacles and objects. Nothing gets in your way, and the sense of power you possess is intoxicating. I feel so guilty fighting the police in this game because of how futile their efforts are. When you first touch down in the open world, they start reading you your rights, and it's just a ridiculous scenario.
You have the right to remain. Anything you say will be. What's the point?
The title for this game is so appropriate, Ultimate Destruction. In fact, when you look up apt in the dictionary, you'll find this game. It's a visually and mechanically polished superhero experience that delivers everything it means to be the Green Worldbreaker. From memory, I recall actually beating the game on Christmas Day as well, and going back to play it for this video brought back a lot of really fond memories. It goes to show how certain objects and things can become emblematic of a certain time and place in your life, and for me, this game isn't just lines of code and artwork, but a time capsule to a simpler time.
It's Christmas of 2008. My brother just got a brand new PlayStation 3 a few months ago, and I unwrapped a copy of Battlefield Bad Company. Instead of actually engaging in normal Christmas festivities, 12-year-old me decided he'd sneak off into the living room and give the game a go. Bored cousins and relatives came curiously along, filling up all the couches in our living room to watch me play the next-gen Battlefield game. I remember booting it up and playing the tutorial. Now remember, in 2008 this was a really cutting edge game, and we'd only been recently introduced to the 7th generation of consoles. Just a few minutes into the tutorial, you're given the task to shoot an explosive into a building, and to everyone's awe, it actually blew a hole through the wall of the building. This was quite literally a bombshell moment for everyone in the room. We all just sort of lit up and we loved it. None of us had seen anything like this before in a video game. It was really novel. My brother and I would go on to play this game religiously for the next couple of years. I finished the campaign an unhealthy amount of times, and together we made it to the highest rank in the online mode, and we got pretty far on the leaderboards. It really was our game, and I have super fond memories of coming home from school to play Battlefield Bad Company. So returning to this was a surprisingly emotional experience for me. Obviously the visuals aren't as amazing as I remember, nor is the destruction stuff as impressive, but as a whole this game is still very decent. Against all odds, the online mode is still up and people are still playing it. Selecting Quick Match got me into a game in about 30 seconds on the PS3, which I never expected, and although I got destroyed because everyone still playing this is perfect at it, I had a lot of fun reliving this, and I really like how weighty the weapons feel. The single player wasn't quite as fun as I remembered. It has a respawn system which doesn't really punish you for dying, and I found the controls to be really quite weird, but the style and humour, and particularly the soundtrack, are still really great. I adore that main menu theme, and to this day I find myself humming it on occasion. The single player is probably the best single player in the Battlefield series, but that really isn't saying much. Bad Company is not a timeless game by any means, but back then this really was the perfect Christmas present for me, and it's still a pretty good game today. I won't soon forget spending the afternoon blowing up houses on Christmas Day, and then spending a couple of years after that growing up with this game. It was fantastic. And with that, Game Brain and I have looked at our best gaming Christmas presents growing up, so let's move on to our worst.
I'm not gonna mince my words. Fuck Superman Returns. This game is a broken, boring mess. The flying is laborious, the fighting is unresponsive, the graphics are... just look at it. The city is this enormous wasteland of bland, beige blocks that make me physically sick. The PlayStation 2 port of Superman Returns is certainly the lesser version of its Xbox 360 counterpart, but that doesn't excuse a game that's most exciting moment includes shooting meteorites out of the sky for 15 minutes straight. There's certainly a part of me that feels bad for developers tasked with making Superman games. The character isn't really suited to a video game adaptation, and the history of Superman games speaks to this point. Flying is just a hard mechanic to nail, and building an open world large enough to occupy such a fast-moving character would certainly be a challenge for any developer. But that's all the sympathy I've got for this game. Just look at the way Superman runs. He looks like a geriatric with scoliosis who hasn't cleared his bowels in 10 days. Speaking of bowel movements, the combat system is a broken tornado of shit. Mindless button mashing is the only conceivable way to defeat enemies, and any glimmer of light that comes when you enjoyably take down a group of foes is quickly extinguished by the clunky animations and unresponsive attacks. Getting this game for Christmas was an upsetting and miserable experience. When you only get one game a year and it turns out to be this, it's hard to see the bright side. Thankfully though, a lot of time has passed since I was gifted Superman Returns, and I can say confidently that I've put all of my anguish behind me. In fact, I feel strangely at peace now. I think it's finally time to move on.
So I couldn't actually think of any single standout games that really ruined Christmas for me, but I do remember my loving and caring friends once gave me a Christmas of Steam games to remember. Looking through my product history, Christmas of 2014 was rough. Let's go through these one by one, and keep in mind I haven't played much of any of these. Goat Simulator is a parody game that's purposefully very broken and very silly. This game went sort of viral back when it came out, and I remember really disliking it at the time because it was $10 for a broken game with just one map. But hey, at least they were always fairly upfront about that. Since then, they've added another map, quite a few new features, and an MMO parody, which is kind of neat, but I still feel like a complete wet blanket not liking this. It's just not the comedy gold it thinks it is, and it gets old after 15 minutes or so. However, I think if I was a kid, I would really love this. Postal 2 was banned in Australia back in 2003, and I remember watching videos of this game on early YouTube and thinking it looked awesome because I was just a kid. If you don't know what this is, it's a parody game that's hyper offensive and edgy, and in 2012 it was nonchalantly released on Australian Steam despite still technically being banned here. It's sort of interesting thanks to its sheer absurdity and the context of its release, but like Goat Sim, it feels awful to control and gets old fast when you're actually playing it. Uriel's Chasm is strange. The Steam description just says the death of everything alongside a mostly negative user rating. It seems to want to be some sort of high concept philosophical sci-fi, which I can appreciate, but from the little chance I gave it, it was both boring and confusing. After spending 10 minutes watching a strange FMV and flying around collecting Bibles, I'd had enough. Let's move on. Dead Bits is an arcade first-person shooter which sets you back 99 cents. Initially I didn't mind this game. It starts with bite-sized levels and the guns feel okay to shoot, but the levels quickly get longer and they're lazily thrown together. There are some issues with movement and getting stuck on things, there's weird mouse smoothing, and every time you die it takes forever to start the mission over. Maybe there's a good game like this, but this is bad. Speaking of bad, Bad Rats is about as bad gets. This game is a bit of a meme on Steam. It's infamous for being that game you gift to people as a joke. It's a physics puzzler where you place objects to get a ball to its destination, along the lines of something like The Incredible Machine, except the physics are so inconsistent that different outcomes happen virtually every single time, even if you don't change anything, which kinda renders the whole game to be meaningless. In that way, it's really astonishing, but otherwise, as the title implies, it's just a bad game featuring rats.
I doubt it's just Minimme and I who've had experiences like we've detailed in this video, so please, I encourage all of you to head down to the comments below and share with us your own best and worst video games that you've ever gotten for Christmas.
It was really fun making this video. I got to laugh at some trash games, and I'm so glad I got an excuse to talk about bad company. If you want to check out my channel, I mainly do laid-back videos about graphically impressive handheld games as well as game reviews. If not, that's cool too. I'm just glad to be here.
But as always guys, thanks so much for watching. Have a safe and pleasant holiday season, and I'll see you next time.